Hey there, EdCats. I'm Dr. Brad Burenheide, Associate Professor in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction here in the College of Education, and this is my EdCat chat on teaching Kansas history. 10 things to know and use when teaching Kansas history. Now, number one, Kansas is important. Kansas has been the barometer of the nation, and if things aren't going well here, things aren't going well in the country. So if you look back in the history of Kansas, Kansas has been very, very significant. And people trust the Great Plains states, especially what's happening here in Kansas. I mean, you could look back into the 1930s with William Allen White. He was the most influential newspaper editor. So in other words, Kansas is big and important to remember about. Number two, there's great resources. The Kansas State Historical Society has great things that you can use in your classroom. Whether it's things like the Read Kansas cards, their website has a bunch of primary sources, and you can find those things at the kshs.org website. Their museum and library in Topeka is awesome, and they have perhaps one of the best textbooks in the country for state history, The Kansas Journey. It was written by the executive director of the Kansas State Historical Society, Jenny Jin, and she was able to call the archives and resources of the library there, and it's a great textbook. Even though it's used in middle schools, anyone teaching anything about Kansas history can draw from it. There's great stories in Kansas. El Cuartelejo, Coronado, Dwight D. Eisenhower. There's also things like ghost towns, folk tales, myths, legends. You can get all of these things from great books that you can find at places like garage sales, bookstores. You EdCats should remember the dusty bookshelf down there in Aggieville. You can find books like these there. Also, your libraries have great things. Additionally, Kansas State University's College of Education, we have a great series of documentaries now. One of them that would be great for teaching the Civil War era is Dawn of Day. And it's a great documentary about the Underground Railroad and the role that it played in Kansas. Reason number four, or thing number four to remember, there are historical societies all across the state. 104 of the 105 counties in Kansas have county historical societies and museums. They have people that want to help you. Give them enough time and they will bend over backwards. All you have to do is ask. So make sure that you tap that great local resource. Tip number 5, Kansas History Day. It is a history fair style competition that occurs across the state every year. You can get great information about it at kansashistoryday.org. And this competition has led many students to do research, interpretation, and discover some great things in Kansas. One group of 4 kids from Fort Scott High School back in the 1990s created a presentation called Life in a Jar. It was a story about Irina Sendler, and what this did is uncovered a great story of the Holocaust in Poland. It led to this becoming a dramatized play, and the 4 girls got to go to Washington, D.C., and now help run a foundation to tell the story of Irina Sendler. kansashistoryday.org gives you all the details that you need to know to participate in this great activity. Number 6, Kansas Project Archaeology. Remember I told you about the Kansas State Historical Society? Well, they have a program to help you dig back into the unwritten history of Kansas, the story of Native Americans, and how they lived and understanding their culture and what they did. Kansas Project Archaeology is run by the Kansas State Historical Society and their public archaeologist, Virginia Wolfkuhl, and you can get information and teaching units by attending a simple training there. Great way to get kids thinking critically and a great way to help them uncover a lot of the history of Kansas. Tip number 7, local resources. Now this may sound odd, but if you go to a smaller rural school, make sure you go down to the local coffee shop, restaurant, or wherever the locals gather. Ask questions about local history there, because a lot of these, quote, old timers have a lot of the stories of the area that you can get a lot of information and uncover a lot of the local history, a lot of the local flavor there. And these folks will share great stories that you'll be able to share and be able to tell a great story to your kids. Tip number 8, field trips. You'll hear a lot of people tell you that schools don't have money for field trips anymore. That may be true, but here's what you can do. Instead of taking kids to these great little historical sites, how about you take the sites to them? If you got something as simple as an iPad or a flip camera, you can go out and do a field trip for your kids. The Beecher Bible and Rifle Church, it's still standing in Wabaunsee today and has services every Sunday. Why don't you go there and show them that the building still stands? Or take them to Alcove Springs, just south of Marysville, the Pawnee Earth Lodges, west of Scandia. You might remember Pillsbury Crossing from your time here in Manhattan. All of these places you can take your kids to by going out and filming it. And it's a lot of fun to go out and have a nice weekend trip, record some history, and then share it with your kids. Tip number 9, the museums. The Eisenhower Museum, the William Allen White Museum, the El Cortalejo Museum, Albany Museum, Threshing Bees, the World War I Museum in Kansas City, county museums. All of these places have people that want to help you and things that you can take from them and share the story with your kids. Finally, tip number 10, it's fun. Getting kids exploring history, having them do hands-on things, working with documents, working with realia. This is what history is all about. And getting your kids to be involved with it is a lot of fun. And that's the biggest thing that you should take with it. You can have a lot of fun with kids teaching them about history. Who knows? You might learn something from it too. That was 10 tips for Kansas history. I hope you enjoyed this EdCat chat, and I hope you learn and teach Kansas history in your classroom.